This was the opening move of this incredibly complex sacrificial game which caught my eye. It's Nodirbek Abdusattorov playing with white. His opponent, Arjun, they're both top 7 players in the world, and it's in the fide-world-team-chess-championship which is currently being played. Let's dive in on this classic because we see d4 now from Arjun, or d5 rather, the explosive c4, e6, and no d4 pawn committed by Nodirbek. Love how he plays this, first by building the banana hammock, knight f6, tucks this guy into bed, and now Arjun's like, fine, you want to give me the space, I'll take the space, castles, and he erects that big black center. We love to see it. Knight c6, he could be going for the triple whammy of pawns soon, and so Nodirbek fights back with this one. We've really got shades of a Benoni defense, but with colors reversed here, and if you go to support with the next pawn, well, you can do so. It's soon played actually, and you don't normally see takes, or you're giving white an easy hand at development after either pawn takes or bishop takes, both possible. So instead, some cool and calm development. Now takes is played, pawn recaptures. We get Chewbacca's favourite move, the Wookiee one. Now this pawn push here, not strictly necessary, you could have just castled there. And do we see any development of these pieces? No. So interesting how Nodirbek plays this with knight e5, putting huge pressure on that pony on c6. So takes, rook recaptures, castles, and now so often you see players going for a3, b5, that sort of expansion thing. It's playable, right? But I love the simplicity that Nodirbek handles this with. He goes pawn b3 here. Now bishop d6, kicks back this rook, e5 takes the centre and opens the eyes of this forlorn bishop, soon going to attack white, and now a really instructive positional moment. How's this guy getting into the game? If you're fianchetto, well, you're a bit dead for eternity. You're not really finding any action along here. Bishop d2, you're not really going anywhere, so bishop a3 gets those ones off the board by force, queen recaptures, and now knight d2, and you've got good control of e4, and watch what happens on the queen side. First bishop g4, don't Botez gambit, queen d7 nudges back, looking to swap the light squared bishops over here, but watch this. Pawn to c5, using the 3-on-2 pawn majority. Rook ac8 pressures, and before it can drop off the board, we see Nodirbek pushing the second juicer. Bishop h3 prepares to attack, exchange a defender, but look at this. Bishop h1, tucking it back into the corner. Normally a terrible move, but here it makes a lot of sense, because how does black continue the attack when you don't let the queen come in? It's not so straightforward. Knight d5 best, going for this juicy square, but missed. Knight g4 instead. Now it looks aggressive, but there's a little bit of a traffic jam, not so easy to attack, and in the meantime here comes knight e4, Nodirbek neighing away as he plays it. He's preparing to go to Forktown, population Arjun. You could rook lift already, but instead we see b6, and the idea is if you jump, well, bang, queen takes, and you lose a queen down here. Black's a piece ahead. So this rook defends the queen, renews the threat of knight d6, but takes is played. Knight d6 not possible, of course, so pawn recaptures here, and now we get the mini rook lift, saving those ones from the fork which is coming. But anyway, the knight jumps. You could play rook b8, hit the only open file, but instead rook f8, and look at the aggressive intentions. Nodirbek spots it and plays the queen over to pin the pawn to the king. So it sidesteps. f5 is renewed, but now queen d5. Love this move, centralizing like a monster spider and setting up tactics. f5 comes, Arjun roars, looking to push through the center. That's where his counterplay comes in compensation for white's strong pawn. Anyway, Nodirbek pushes here. The queen goes to e7, and it allows an opportunity for white to actually push with f4 here. Not played. Of course you can't take or drops. If push, there's too much white control of this square, so that's no good. And if you try and sink a knight in here, well, anyway takes, and you just play around that knight and you run into knight b5, not only hitting this, but then you're taking here. This guy's lost its defender. You can do this, but anyway, white's doing great in this position. Really interesting lines. So this was played instead. Now it sets up this idea of giving up the light squared bishop for knight and then winning this central pawn because the knight covers it, right? And it's attacked twice. And something else to note, if rook d8, trying to win a piece, you know, the knight's pinned, well, this tactic saves the day. If queen takes, you've lost the defender of the rook. If the king moves, well, then you take the rook. I mean, both of these guys are so sharp. Really amazing standard of chess. Queen f6 therefore played, saying, fine, now if you take, going for my pawn, well, I'm crashing through here. You got big problems, so that's not good. So instead we see knight b5, best move, hits the rook, it drops back, pawn c7 played. I mean, both players playing with absolute precision. This is high quality chess, and f4 technically strongest. Makes sense with the major pieces lined up. But e4 is played. Also really tricky to meet. You know, if you take or anything, you're going to be opening the file. If you take the knight, you're opening the file. So we do see the bishop retreat, or do we? Here's where Nodirbek plays a sacrificial move, which is just fantastic. What an understanding this guy's got. He plays knight to d6, saying, please take my bishop. No worries. Looks so scary around this king. How is it going to survive this? But then you take here, rook recaptures, and there's this amazing slow motion rook lift, picking up a tempo on the queen, which has to come to the back rank because of these kind of issues. And then there's rook d6, no time to take, or rook d8, and you win the queen. So what else to do? You know, knight f6, hit the queen, drop back. And black's just absolutely paralyzed. You can't take, you can't really move around to pick up the pawn, or there's a check here and then you're winning things. It's just a paralysis, and white's winning the game. So we did not see bishop taken with the pawn. We see knight e5. Okay, now you have to react because the knight's going to take with check. Bishop g2 playable, but bishop h1. Really scary looking to leave your king boxed in, but again, it's so sharp. The move to find advantage here, or sorry, level game, is pawn takes. Looks suicidal, you've just dropped a piece. But then you push here and fork these two. The lines are incredibly complicated. Here's one sample, right? And it leads to equality, zeros, as ever, from the all-powerful computer. What was the line I was looking at? You know, whatever, or takes the bishop. Here's a sample, and this is roughly level, but crazy ninja stuff. We did not see pawn captures. Instead, knight captures, far more human, forking the rooks. Now we see an exchange of the exchanges, if anyone ever said that sentence before. And the fascinating thing about this position is it hangs on a knife edge. If it's black to move, black's winning. White to move, white's winning. So let me show that in action. Pawn a3, a nothing move. Look at that. Arjun's winning the game. Hit the rook. Saves itself somewhere. Who knows where. Or maybe you go like this. But then pawn d3. You save this critical d pawn. Huge counterplay, of course. And black's winning. So come back here, though. It's white to move. And queen d7's played. So you hit the rook. It forces Arjun to go queen a6. I mean, queen f8 also possible. This one really reminds me of the move he played against Magnus. I'll link that game at the end. He played it just the other day. Incredible battle. And now it allows white to take on d4, and this is when you know you're in big trouble because you've lost your source of counterplay and white's still exists. We see king h7, you know, dealing with these back rank check issues here. Bishop g2, these ones leave the board. Nodirbek breathes a sigh of relief, and queen d3 desperately goes for the play. It is a good move. If takes, I mean, it was given the double question marks, but from a practical perspective, if takes, then pawn captures, and this is actually leading to a draw because the d and c pawn distracts the rooks and both drop off the board. So not played. You could take here, but instead we see queen e5, further covering the pawn. You know, if the queen had gone somewhere kind of stupid, then there were options of taking, distracting the rook, or even check first, then going, whoops, not here, but king g1. Then maybe you try and distract the rook. Why is this not working here? I've just completely messed it up. Is this not perpetual? Oh no, sorry, I put the queen on a stupid square. But what I'm trying to demonstrate here, Hikaru-esque, is that if the queen was on, say, a5, then you get the perpetual checks. So white's got to be careful here. But queen e5 covers nicely. Queen d7 heads back to try and round up that pawn. h4 here, king g6, rook c5. Just a master of control here. Nodirbek Abdusatorov. King f7's played, and it offers this exchange of pawns. Now technically this is winning here, but it's not that obvious. You're only a pawn ahead in a rook endgame. They're notoriously drawish if you take a wrong step. So instead we see queen f4. Absolutely the play when the king's so exposed. Maintain this dangerous pawn. King g6 is played, and you could go g4 to really take the tin opener to the king side, but h5 check is played. The king should step back into the cubbyhole. Very difficult to determine that though. Takes was played, and it allows this incredible checkmating idea. Not actually played, but this would have been beautiful. If takes, this actually leads to a mate, g5 only move, and king h3 creates the unstoppable threat of pawn g4 mate. There's a sample line. I mean, beautiful stuff, but not played. Rook takes with check, king back. Now we see this one dodge back and cover the pawn. We see queen e6. This rook comes over. Another pawn drops with check. I mean, Arjun's getting kicked from pillar to post. This has truly been a majestic game from Nodirbek. So impressed. And after rook e3, he even allows the pawn to drop because this is his point. Your king's getting mated or your queen's dropping off the board. Where to go? You know, he tries this one. If you'd gone to e8, the queen was invading with check. So he tries this. If you go this way, then this is what we actually see in the game, sorry. If you'd gone this way, well, then this wins the queen. Let's stick with the game. This finished things because if you step back with the queen, then you win it like this. If you step up with the king, then you win the queen like this. And it's just game over after that. Really incredible Benoni structure. Really makes me want to take it up and play it myself. Hope you enjoyed, and have a look at the video on screen if you want to see that incredible Magnus Arjun game from Norway Chess. What a contest that was. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon. Cheers.